Hey there everyone, welcome back to Dan Cave and welcome to video build of the 1/24th scale Italeri Ford Escort RS800 rally car. So they said it couldn't be done. They said this kit is unbuildable, it's rubbish, it's awful, don't do it, it's a waste of time, it'll never come out right, it's impossible to build. But you know what, I had the kit in the stash, I'm stubborn, so I decided, you know what, I'm going to build it anyway. Plus, you know, it builds up to the 1981 World Rally Championship winning car for Vatanen. Of course, it was privateer as well, so you know that was the first time privateer won a championship, and it stayed that way until 2017, of course. But yeah, so Ari's championship winning car, Dave Richards beside him. Of course, Dave Richards of Pro Drive fame sat in the co-pilot seat, navigator seat. So yeah, so it is a challenging kit. It's not easy, it doesn't fall together, but I built it anyway. So to see how I got on with that, let's head on over to the bench and have a look at how I got on. But before you do, don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment as well. So yeah, let's head on over. I'll be back at the end. So here we go, heading back to November 1981, mud and gravel of Chester, and the final round of the 1981 championship to build this RS800. So usual kind of starting places, let's get all those body parts sorted. Some massive sprue gates from Italeri. I suppose this kit is an ex-Eschi kit, now boxed by Italeri. And just catch the light right and you can see them horrible sink marks across that bonnet piece. So first and foremost, get all those kind of sprue gates and seam lines and stuff like that, get that cleaned up. Mixture of UMP sanders and the D-Space sanding tool as well. Plenty of cleanup work around the body itself. Lots of overrun on the seams, etc. And then let's get some Humbrol model filler onto this plastic. Now I find the Humbrol filler great. I find it sands out very well. Solvent based, so it actually binds to the plastic pretty well. You can add a little bit of Tamiya extra thin to it, which will thin it out a little bit. I'm just kind of working that across the sink marks, basically building up where it's sunken, and then I'll sand it back flush once it's fully cured. As you can see, that rear spoiler, rear boot lid are also particularly affected by the sink marks on this kit. So once that's given, probably leave it cure overnight, you know, at least 12 hours to cure properly. It can dry a lot quicker, but I tend to leave it about 12 hours for these bigger jobs. And then start working it back with the UMP sanding sticks. This is the UMP 180, I think it is. And then 240 sanding, mini sanding sponge, thinny sanding sponge. Once I've sanded all that back, I'm going to rescribe through the panel lines just to add a little bit of depth to them. Same around the rubber seals around the windows. That will help with masking later on towards the end. And then once it's all cleaned up, body's been washed and degreased, blow off any dust, and I'm going to lay down some UMP white primer. I'm going to lay down probably 3 to 4 coats so I can cover up the grey from the model filler. And the UMP does give good coverage. The 4 coats will cover this absolutely fine. And because it's going to be then a white lacquer paint afterwards, that should completely cover any of those filled areas on the body and the bonnet. So I believe I'm using TS26 decanted and sprayed through the H&S Infinity airbrush, which is my go-to lacquer airbrush for bodies. And laying down another 3 coats of that. As you can see, there's no sign of any of that filler coming through and no real sign of any sink marks. So I think that's a job well done. Now, all the Rothman's blue areas on this kit are provided via decals. Italeri decals are excellent. They use mainly cartograph. Can't remember if these ones are cartograph, but they're generally very, very good. They also, on the decal sheet, include sections of just coloured decal. So if there is any gaps or any tears, you've got spare decal in the various colours to help you repair, certainly on the bigger areas. And as you can see, I'm speeding up the footage so we can get through and get all these decals laid down onto the kit. So plenty of hot water in a coffee warmer, plenty of UMP decal solutions, plenty of heat. And these decals go down absolutely fantastic. So it's all a question of getting them all lined up correctly, getting rid of any moisture. I'm also using a little bit of microset on the surface just to help with that initial, I suppose, cleansing of the areas where the decals are going. Once they're settled into place, it'll be the use of the UMP decal solutions and some heat as well, which will get all those decals nicely nestled down onto the surface. So there you can see, as mentioned earlier, those sections of decals for the blue, the orange and the yellow. Very useful for patching any areas where the decals don't meet, as I'm just doing now in around the panel line. And then adding the final Rothman's part of the decal. Italeri have provided it in two separate parts to make sure they don't violate any tobacco advertising laws, but at least they include them in the kit, as some manufacturers don't. So hats off to Italeri for that. So then it's working around the body, getting all the smaller sponsorship decals everywhere in the kit. And once that's been left to cure, it's time to get over to the spray booth to lay down the clear coat. So Gravity Spain 2K, 3 coats mixed in a 3:1:1 ratio. First coat is basically just a tack coat. You're just looking for basically a bare amount of material that will act as basically a coat for the subsequent coats to stick to. So you're not looking for a gloss finish now. You're just looking for good coverage and enough that will allow parts to stick to. And then once you go back in for subsequent coats, that's when you start building up the clear coat. Here I'm heading in for the very final third coat. And this is where you want a glass-like finish, because this is pretty much how it's going to dry and cure once it's left for 4 or 5 days. So as is usual with Gravity Spain, lays down an absolute dream. So that's set aside to cure for as long as necessary, but probably a minimum of 3 days. And then it's time to start working on things like the engine, which has been primed in black and then painted with alclad steel, I would imagine. The interior, I've got some seat belts. So I think this is the Studio 27 set of seat belts I'm using. So they use a self-adhesive material. I think I prefer ribbon. Tend to find with the self-adhesive material, the edges tend to become a little bit more frayed. They don't quite have the thickness effect, but they do go down very well on what are, I guess, poorly represented seats for this kit, but it looks all right. So seat belts are in, glued in place with some CA glue. Door cards can go on as well. Once again, using some CA glue, they just pop straight into place. The other seat goes in as well. Make sure the door cards are nicely seated in. That'll make sure there's no fouling issues with the body a bit later on. Engine has been added. Exhaust, headers, manifold. Front suspension has now been popped in place. On both sides, and then the actual subframe added as well, which will lock them in place. A couple of interior bits need to be added. A couple of fire extinguishers. And then I go back to sorting out the front suspension. So once that's all popped in place, and the steering arm as well, first test fit of the wheels. This is one of the areas where I knew there was likely to be problems, so I've done a very quick test fit of the wheels and tyres. And now we're going to see how that body sits on. So it does pop straight down onto the running gear chassis. And I can see immediately that rear end sits way too low, and the track of the front and rear is way too narrow. Those wheels and tires sit way too far into the arches. They should be pretty much flush with the arches. So for this kit, I'm going to just do some modifications. I'm going to use some styrene rod, drill it out, add some pins. So here I'm adding a pin just to go into the brake disc. And I'm going to drill through the center of the styrene rod. Which I've already done. That will slide over the pins I've put in. And then I've trimmed them off. And I'm now mounting the wheels with some CA glue. Now obviously the brake discs are not located there. They are much closer to the wheels themselves. But again, this is just for cosmetic reasons. The underside will never be seen. On the rear, I've heightened the rear basically. So I've added some spacers. And I'm basically going to perform a similar job with the hubs on the rear as well. Although I've now mounted the brake discs to the inside of the wheels themselves. So again, with a little bit of checking, this has given me some revised geometry. So there is a potential at some point I'll look at mocking up some parts to... They'll be, we'll say, curbside parts in essence. To be able to do the suspension right. Because I do have a couple of decal schemes for Mark II Escorts, which... it would be nice to do them at some point, and as this is the only kit in town, it would be good to have the parts to do it. So once again, a quick check of how that body fits. And as you can see, those wheels are much closer to the edge of the overhang on the wings. So much happier with that setup now. Now it's time to go back, flatten back that 2K, because basically that 2K has not been touched for quite a while. So knock it back with some God hand sponges, work your way through the grades. Once you're happy with that, use some polishing compounds just to restore that beautiful gloss finish. Now, the polishing compounds do give you a little bit of control over how shiny it is. For some older cars, sometimes you might not want it as hard a gloss. Depending on the subject, gives it more of a realistic appearance. So sometimes you can just use the initial compound and the polishing. So for the polishing side, I've decided to go machine polish, just to bring up a nice beautiful shine on this Mark II bodywork. So final bit of a wipe down, make sure I'm happy with everything. Lovely reflection of the lights above me, which for me says that, yeah, this is a pretty shiny finish. So it's now on to the final assembly. So front bumper valance is on. The glass has now been fitted. The glass is terrible in this kit, by the way. And I'm just adding the sun visor strip as well, which once again is made up of a Rothmans decal, which is split in two by Italeri. And then again, it's adding that body piece onto the chassis, which gets actually glued in place because it really just slides on. And then the bonnet is just left loose. And that's pretty much it. Let's have a look at the final photos of this kit. So you can kind of see how bad the tires are. There's a lot of sanding to get them at least presentable. But overall, I am happy with this kit. I'm pleased I did it. I'm pleased it came out okay. For a kit that a lot of people say can't be built, I'm quite happy with the result. So let's head back to me for some final thoughts. So there we go. This kit is done. Not without its issues. I have to say I actually quite enjoyed it in the end. There are parts of the kit that are truly awful. The wheels and tires are apocalyptically bad. The glass is not brilliant. The sink marks in the bodywork, they're not brilliant. They are fixable. You know, some filler and some sanding and you can fix them. You know, I think the worst of the sink marks don't look a problem on how the kit is coming out for me. The wheels and tires are pretty bad. The location of the wheels and tires is awful. The width of the track on those cars is just awful. Rear suspension is way too low at the back. But, you know, that being said, you know, you put a bit of effort in and I think it's come out and looks all right on the shelf. It definitely, you know, captures an essence of a Rothman's RS800. So I'm happy. And you know, it also kind of proved that, you know, this kit is buildable. You know, I think a little bit of work, you know, I might do some CAD designs, maybe come up with some better front suspension, rear suspension. I think that would improve the kit immensely. Clear parts, not much you can do about it. Just try and polish them up as best you can. I mean, other than that, I think it went together okay. I'm quite happy with it. So there we go. Not high up on the list of finished kits, but if you want a Mark II Escort as a rally car, that's, you know, it's the only game in town. So there we have it. Yeah, so thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like the video, and yeah, see you all very, very soon in another video build, no doubt. So bye bye for now.